I was standing at the altar, waiting for Margaret. The music had started, the guests were seated, the pastor was smiling, and I was dying inside, because she wasn't coming. There was no traffic, no accident, no emergency, just a note, folded neatly, left behind with my cufflinks and her ring. Robert, I know you love me, but I can't marry someone who sees me as his ending. I want a beginning. I'm sorry. That was it. No explanation, no location, no second page. I tried calling her. The number was still active, but she didn't pick up, not once. Melissa, my best friend since childhood, was the first to reach me. She took the letter from my shaking hands and read it. Her lips tightened. She looked up at me, voice soft. She planned this, Robert. I shook my head. Planned what? But her eyes said it all. She knew. Everyone did, except me. Margaret didn't run away. She flew. 4 hours after leaving me at the altar, she posted a photo on her story. A beach, blue water, cocktails, white dress, and a man beside her. Daniel, my old college roommate, my ex-best friend, the one who moved to Dubai last year. He was smiling, holding her waist, and her head was on his shoulder. The caption? First morning of forever. I stared at the screen for minutes. I couldn't blink, couldn't breathe. I let her choose the wedding date. She chose the venue, the food, the flowers, the honeymoon package. And now I realized, she chose everything. For him. They were using my itinerary, my money, my carefully booked honeymoon, and she didn't even bother changing the dates. My friends tried to control the damage, my parents didn't say a word. Melissa stayed by my side, pacing like she was going to explode. Finally, she did. She's evil, Robert, not impulsive, not confused, just evil. I didn't speak, not for hours. My chest was silent, but my blood roared like a storm. I wasn't angry, not yet. I was hollow, until the florist called. Hi, Mr. Robert, just confirming, should we deliver the bouquet to the Maldives villa tomorrow as scheduled? I blinked. What bouquet? The white peonies with the custom note you requested for Margaret's welcome breakfast. It's on your package. We added Daniel's name too, per the last update. I gripped the phone, my mouth dry. Someone updated it, someone accessed my itinerary. They didn't just hijack my honeymoon, they customized it, and they used my name to do it. That's when the silence cracked, and all I could think was, she's not on her honeymoon, she's celebrating my funeral. Because Margaret didn't just leave me, she buried me, in front of my friends, my family, my future. And now she was sipping mimosas, on a beach I paid for. With a man I once called brother, wearing the white I was supposed to remove. That's when I knew, this wasn't heartbreak, this was war. She took my wedding day, she turned it into her honeymoon. She left me standing at the altar with nothing but silence and a receipt. But she made one mistake, she didn't check who owned the villa. And she forgot who booked her return flight. I was never the kind of man who chased after people. I never begged friends to stay, never pleaded with exes to explain. I believed that if someone really cared, they wouldn't need to be convinced. Then Margaret happened. She didn't walk into my life, she infiltrated it, softly, quietly, like light under a door. At first, it was just hallway glances in our shared law school building, then accidental coffee shop meetings, then group projects. By the end of the first semester, she'd memorized my coffee order. By the second, I was picking her up every morning. It was slow, not electric, but it was certain. Margaret wasn't the kind of woman who fought to be noticed, she just was, polished, poised, measured. She smiled like she knew something no one else did. And maybe she always did. I was drawn to her because she didn't need me, she wanted me, and that felt powerful. She knew how to hold a conversation without revealing anything. She'd ask about my childhood, my goals, my fears, then nod and hum like she understood. But when I asked about hers, she'd deflect. She'd say, that's not as interesting. And I believed her. Because when you're in love, mystery feels like magic. We graduated together. I got a job at a mid-size corporate firm. She joined a non-profit doing family law. We moved into a shared apartment that she decorated entirely in beige and navy. Her colors, her rules. But I liked it, or thought I did. Every decision we made, I let her lead. The couch, her pick, the cutlery, her style, the vacation spots, always where she'd feel Instagrammable. I never said no, because saying no felt like conflict, and I didn't want conflict. I wanted peace. I wanted her. Margaret had this way of looking at me when she was proud, not like I'd impressed her, but like she'd trained me, refined me, made me into the man she always knew I could be. When I got promoted at the firm, she booked a dinner before I even told my parents. When I bought my first investment property, she posted about it before I signed the papers. And when I suggested we finally get married, she didn't say yes with tears. She just said, "Finally." That should have been a red flag, but I wore it like a badge. We'd been together for 7 years. People called us the solid couple. We weren't loud or dramatic. We didn't post couple goals reels, but we lasted, we survived, we were stable, or so I thought. Melissa always warned me. Melissa was my childhood best friend, the kind of woman who wears flannel to brunch and doesn't care if her eyeliner smudges. She and Margaret never got along. Melissa didn't trust her, said she was curated, not real. "She doesn't love you, Rob," Melissa said one night after drinks. "She loves the idea of you, the way you look in photos, the way your name sounds beside hers. You're an accessory." I'd laughed, called it jealousy, said Melissa was projecting, but now, standing in the ruins of what was supposed to be my wedding, I realized Melissa wasn't bitter, she was right. Daniel entered my life during undergrad, charming, smooth, alpha type. He had a way of talking that made you forget what your own opinion was. We were close in college, even lived together for a year. But after graduation, he faded out. Took a job abroad. Sent the occasional message. When Margaret and I got engaged, I texted him. He congratulated me, said he couldn't make the wedding due to back-to-back investor meetings. I didn't question it. Why would I? We'd grown apart. But now I understood. He wasn't busy, he was booked, on my honeymoon. Looking back, the signs were there. Margaret got quieter 6 months before the wedding. She started working late, said she needed alone time more often, switched to a new phone plan with better privacy options. She smiled less, laughed more with her phone. I thought it was wedding stress. I told myself all brides get distant before the big day. I thought she needed space. I didn't realize she was making room for someone else. The honeymoon, I let her pick every detail. I thought I was being supportive, thought I was giving her the dream she deserved. She said she always wanted an overwater villa, said she wanted privacy, seclusion, and space. She even laughed once and said, "Robert, promise me you won't check the bookings, I want to surprise you." And I, the fool, agreed. I gave her the keys to the kingdom, and she handed them to a trader. Melissa was the one who showed me the Instagram photo. I was in shock, silent, frozen. Melissa, on the other hand, was trembling with rage. "She used you, Rob," she whispered. "She used all of us. She played the long game." But I couldn't speak, because I still had the ring in my pocket, still had my vows in my coat, still remembered the rehearsal dinner 2 nights before, when Margaret leaned in and said, "I can't wait to wake up as your wife, liar, actress, thief." And me, I was the stage, the script, the audience. I wasn't her future, I was her alibi. I let her choose everything, and she chose to ruin me, but I wasn't going to stay ruined. I wasn't going to drown in humiliation. I wasn't going to let the world remember me as the guy who got left at the altar. Because if Margaret could plan 7 years of deception, I could plan 7 weeks of revenge. And it would start with her luggage. She thought I'd forget. She thought I'd forgive. She thought I'd fold. But Margaret forgot the most important part about loving a man like me. I don't chase people, but I do bury them. I didn't cry. Not when the priest cleared his throat, not when the guests began whispering, not when my mother collapsed in her seat and muttered, "There must be a mistake." I didn't even cry when I saw the Instagram photo. Margaret, in the villa I booked, in the dress I paid for, with the man I once trusted with my passwords. No, I didn't cry. But something inside me cracked, not like a glass breaking, more like a bone snapping clean in half. It wasn't just heartbreak, it was humiliation. Public, calculated, and televised through Wi-Fi. Melissa was the only one who didn't look away from me. Everyone else gave me that soft, pitiful expression, like I was some poor dog left in the rain. But Melissa? She looked like she wanted to set something on fire. I swear to God, Robert, she said, teeth clenched, if you tell me you're still going to try and talk to her, I will lock you in a room with your own conscience and let it eat you alive. I didn't respond, because the truth, a part of me still wanted to believe it wasn't real, that maybe Daniel photoshopped that picture, that maybe Margaret was drugged, that maybe, just maybe, there was a story I hadn't heard yet. I'd always been rational, always calm, but love makes a fool of logic, and I'd loved her for too long. So I did what any idiot with too much hope does. I called her again. This time, she answered. Robert? Her voice was light, wind in the background, seagulls, laughter. I could hear Daniel, laughing, ordering drinks, calling her babe. My throat burned. Where are you? I asked, even though I already knew. There was a pause, then a sigh. I was going to call you later today, she said. I couldn't face you this morning. This morning? Margaret, you left me at the altar. I know. Soft, calm, like she was apologizing for dropping a plate. Daniel? I asked. Silence. Daniel, I repeated, slower. Yes, she said finally. I'm with him. I sat down. The edge of the altar felt cold beneath me, empty, like the rest of my day. How long? I asked. Robert. How long, Margaret? Another pause. Then, a year. My body didn't move, not a twitch, but the shaking started somewhere deep inside. A year? I didn't plan it, she whispered. It just happened. He reached out. We started talking. I didn't mean to fall back in love with him, but I did. Fall back in love. That meant there had never been a moment she wasn't comparing us. We were engaged for 2 years, I said. You were cheating for half of it? She didn't answer, which meant yes. You let me plan a future for us. You picked a wedding date, Margaret. You picked our house. You picked the villa. And the whole time, you were planning to use it for someone else. I wasn't planning to, she said quickly. Not until recently. I realized I couldn't marry you, and when I looked at Daniel, I felt alive again. I wanted to scream, I wanted to curse, but all I said was, and me, what was I? There was a small, pathetic silence, then she said the words that would stay with me forever. You were safe. Safe, not loved, not cherished, just safe. She hung up before I could reply. Melissa had been sitting beside me the whole time. She didn't ask what Margaret said. She just placed her hand over mine and whispered, let's burn everything. For the first time that day, I smiled. It didn't reach my eyes, but it existed. We didn't go home. We went to my office. I opened my work laptop, logged into the travel management dashboard. Every flight, every booking, every car rental, every reservation, all under my name. Even the welcome gift basket scheduled to be delivered to their villa tomorrow morning. Macarons, champagne. A handwritten card that read, to forever, from the man who waited for you. That card was supposed to be for Margaret. I typed a new one. Congratulations on your betrayal. Enjoy the room. It's prepaid, just like your conscience. Then I canceled the return flights. Both. Margaret and Daniel were now officially stranded. I paused at the final option. Notify guests of change in itinerary. I clicked yes. The group message lit up instantly. Everyone on her side of the wedding party, aunts, uncles, cousins, friends, co-workers, they all got the same message. Robert. Hello everyone, Margaret and Daniel are currently enjoying the honeymoon trip I paid for. Surprise, the bride never made it to the altar, but she made it to the resort, with my ex-best friend. If you're wondering why the wedding was cancelled, feel free to check her Instagram. I sat back. Melissa stood behind me, arms crossed. You good? She asked. No, I replied. But I will be. That night, I packed every photo, every note, every souvenir from our years together. I didn't burn them. Fire was too quick. Instead, I mailed them to her parents, with no return address. They'd hosted the engagement party. They deserved to see what they helped nurture. And Margaret? She didn't text, didn't call. But Daniel did. At 2 a.m., my phone buzzed. No number. The message. Daniel. You didn't have to make it public. That was low. I stared at the screen, then typed back. Robert. Neither did sleeping with my fiancée, but here we are. I blocked him. I lay back in bed, staring at the ceiling. Margaret called me safe, like I was a life jacket she no longer needed. But she forgot something. Safe men know how to prepare, safe men build insurance, safe men survive storms, and when they're betrayed, safe men make sure no one forgets. I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her. Not the Margaret I knew, but the one on that balcony, drink in hand, resting her head against Daniel's chest like she had never worn my ring. And maybe she hadn't. Not truly. Maybe it had always been his. The thought was corrosive. It ate through my chest, slow and acidic. Not loud, not chaotic, just constant. I wasn't grieving a person. I was grieving a decade of illusion. Every dinner, every vacation, every holiday. Was I just the decoy? Was Daniel always in the background, the real name in her heart? I stared at the ceiling fan in the dark. It spun with the same rhythm as my thoughts. Why didn't I see it? Why didn't I stop it? Why did she pick me at all? Melissa checked in every day. She didn't hover, she didn't push, she just showed up, with food, with silence, with rage that mirrored my own. You don't have to forgive her, she said one evening, sitting cross-legged on my couch. You don't even have to heal fast, but you do have to get up eventually. I didn't answer, because I didn't know how. Every song on the radio was a trigger. Every mug in the kitchen had her lipstick ghosted across its memory. Even the smell of vanilla, her favorite candle scent, made my throat tighten. But the worst part, the doubt, not in her, in me. What did I miss? What signs did I ignore? Did I love too blindly? Was I weak? I kept replaying our moments together. The time she cried after I forgot our 4th anniversary. The way she clutched me when her grandmother passed. The softness in her voice when she'd say, "I can't imagine life without you." Were all of those moments rehearsed, practiced, or worse, real, then discarded? I scrolled through old messages, thousands of them, photos, audio notes, anniversary videos. She had said I was her future. She had told me I made her feel safe, and that T.I. was the word that kept stabbing me. Safe. She didn't say loved, or needed, she said safe. I was the shelter while she chased storms, and Daniel was the storm, loud, unpredictable, addictive. He'd always had that way about him. Back in college, girls flocked to him. He never needed effort, just one look, one smirk, one whisper. I remember once catching Margaret watching him at a party. This was before we dated. He was pouring drinks for a crowd. She was watching, curious, amused. I asked her later if she found him attractive. She laughed and said, "He's magnetic, but unstable. You're the kind who lasts." Back then, I took it as a compliment. Now, I realize it was a warning. I wasn't the fire, I was the fire extinguisher, useful only when the damage began. The worst nights were the quiet ones, when no one called, no emails pinged, no distractions came. That's when the fear crept in. Not fear of never loving again, but fear of never trusting again. What if the next woman smiles the same way Margaret did? What if I fall again, believe again, build again, only to be used as a stepping stone again? Love now felt like a loaded weapon, and I wasn't sure if I was willing to reload. One night, I stood in front of the mirror, staring at myself. My eyes looked different, older, not tired, just altered, like something had been scraped away. I touched the side of my face and asked aloud, "Who the hell were you doing all this for? Was it ever about love, or was it about image? Was I chasing her because I loved her, or because I loved who I was when she loved me?" Melissa found me like that the next day, still in last night's clothes, eyes hollow, sitting on the kitchen floor with Margaret's wedding veil in my lap. She didn't say anything, she just took the veil and threw it in the trash, then sat beside me and whispered, "She doesn't live here anymore, Robert. Stop giving her rent in your mind." I nodded, but my chest was still full of ache, full of silence, full of questions with no answers. And then the nightmares began. In every one, I was standing at the altar, Margaret was walking toward me in slow motion, then just as I reached out, she'd vanish, and Daniel would appear behind her, grinning, waving, holding her hand. Sometimes, Melissa would be in the background, screaming, but no sound came out. I'd wake up sweating, choking on air, my sheets soaked, my hands trembling. One night, I woke up and realized I was gripping my own wrist so tightly it had bruised. I needed air, I needed space, I needed to stop needing. So I left the city. I booked a quiet cabin 3 hours away, no Wi-Fi, no noise, just me. For the first 2 days, I didn't speak, I cooked, I walked, I wrote. I didn't write to Margaret, I wrote to myself. Every line was a bleeding truth. You were used, you were patient when you should have been bold, you gave too much room to someone who only wanted escape, you forgot to ask what you needed, and slowly, the fog started to lift. Not all at once, not heroically, but enough to make me see a little clearer. Margaret wasn't just a betrayer, she was a mirror, a reflection of everything I tolerated in the name of love, and Daniel, he was just another man chasing chaos. Let them have each other, let them build something out of the ashes they left behind. Because of me, I was no longer safe, I was fireproof. And the next time someone chose me, it would be because I chose me first. 3 weeks after the wedding that never was, I received an envelope. No sender. Just my name on the front, handwritten in bold strokes I instantly recognized. Margaret. My hands didn't shake, not anymore. I'd already buried the version of me that flinched at the sound of her name. But what was inside shifted everything again. It wasn't a letter, it was a receipt, a copy of a bank transaction, one that had my name on it. It showed a transfer of $75,000 from my joint wedding fund to an account under Daniel's name, 2 days before the wedding date. I stared at it, expressionless. My mind didn't react at first, but my stomach twisted, slow, deliberate, like someone had reached in and turned every organ backward. This wasn't just emotional betrayal, this was theft. She stole from me, she wired my savings to her lover, and I didn't even know until now. Melissa was at my place when I found it. I handed her the paper without a word. She read it once, twice, then dropped it like it burned. She robbed you, she whispered. No, I replied, voice flat. She invested in him. I sat down on the edge of the coffee table, stared at the floor like it might give me a timeline. That money was for the house deposit, I murmured. She said she wanted a place with a garden. Robert, Melissa said, crouching beside me, she's not just a liar, she's a criminal. But I already knew that, and I knew what I had to do next. I went to my bank the next morning, had them trace the IP location of the fund transfer approval. It came from her phone, same login, same two-factor authentication, there was no doubt. I froze the joint account, filed a claim, and contacted a lawyer. That's when it hit me. She used my wedding date to elope. She used my honeymoon booking to hide, and she used my money to bankroll her new life. But that wasn't the twist. The twist came 2 days later when the lawyer I hired got back to me with a report. Daniel's account had been flagged in a fraud investigation. He'd been moving money between shell companies, and he wasn't alone. Margaret's name was on one of the LLCs. Not her first name, but her middle name, hidden, buried deep in the paperwork. But it was her. I felt my lungs tighten as I scrolled through the documents. There it was, Margaret Evelyn Palmer. Registered as a secondary officer on an account based out of the Cayman Islands. That's when the weight of it all hit me. This wasn't just betrayal, this wasn't just love turned to poison. This was a con, a long, slow, patient con, planned over years, executed with surgical precision. I wasn't the man she left, I was the man she targeted. I didn't know how long she'd been planning it, but I knew exactly when it started. 6 months after we got engaged, she insisted we merge our finances, said it would make mortgage approval easier, said she trusted me, said, we're one team now, right? I nodded back then, smiled like a man hypnotized. She kissed me like I was her savior. I never realized I was just her sponsor. Melissa read through the report with me in silence. When she reached the Cayman registration, she sat back and muttered, okay, this isn't a relationship story anymore, this is a damn thriller. I didn't smile, but I felt something rising inside me, not rage, not grief, clarity. They say truth sets you free, but I think it does something better. It sharpened me. I reached out to one of my clients, a private security consultant named Jonathan who owed me a favor, told him I needed surveillance. He didn't ask why, he just said, send me names. I gave him Margaret's, Daniel's, and one more, an unfamiliar name on the LLC list, Victor Black. Jonathan called back the next day. Victor Black is Daniel's cousin, he said. Used to be in crypto, now runs ghost accounts and handles offshore assets for burned clients. He's bad news. Can you trace their activity? I asked. Already did. A pause, then, Robert, they're planning something. There's a pattern in the wire transfers. They're moving chunks every 4 days. That means something big is about to drop. I thanked him, hung up, and stared out my office window. The sun was setting, same sun that once warmed Margaret's skin when she kissed me in our old apartment, same sun that now followed her to Daniel's arms, pretending nothing had changed. But everything had, especially me. Because now, I had proof, I had motive, I had leverage. And Margaret, she had no idea I was watching. I let her pick the wedding date. She used it for betrayal, but I was about to use it for something else, because our wedding date was still legally filed in the registry. She hadn't cancelled it. And in the eyes of the state, she was still my fiancée. Which meant I could still file charges related to marital fraud. Because she'd used our engagement as legal leverage to move funds. And best of all, the LLC tied to her name, it wasn't just shady, it was illegal. Melissa looked at me that night, watching as I scrolled through the evidence. You're not just trying to hurt her now, are you? She asked quietly. You're trying to end her. I looked at her, calm, unblinking. She ended me first. Because this wasn't about heartbreak anymore. This wasn't about romance. This was about the truth, about exposure, about showing the world who she really was. Before she tried to vanish again. Margaret wanted freedom, Daniel wanted money, but me, I wanted justice. I chose the same restaurant where Margaret and I had celebrated our 3rd anniversary. Same table, same jazz in the background, same wine menu. Except this time, there was no toast, no hand-holding, no smiles, just a subpoena and a smirk. Margaret walked in wearing ivory. Of course, she always loved wearing white when she had something to hide. She slid into the seat across from me like we were old lovers meeting for closure, not conspirators sitting on opposite ends of a chessboard. You wanted to see me, she said casually, lifting the water glass to her lips. Yes, I replied. I wanted to watch you lie to my face one last time. She blinked, laughed. Still bitter? Not bitter, I said, leaning forward. Just curious. At what point during our relationship did I become your mark? She flinched for a half second, then smiled like a pageant queen. I don't know what you're talking about. I pulled out the manila envelope, slid it across the table. She didn't touch it at first, but her eyes flickered, once. I see your Cayman paperwork, I said. And Daniel's transfer logs, and the LLC registrations under your middle name. You were never confused, were you? Just calculating. Robert, she said slowly, you're reaching. I smiled. That's what Daniel said when I froze the account he's been laundering through. You should check your texts, I think he's still stranded in Bangkok. Her face changed, just a flicker, but I saw it. Does Melissa know you're spending your time stalking your ex-fiancé like a lunatic? She asked. I leaned back, calm. Melissa is filing the lawsuit. We're suing you both under federal fraud and breach of fiduciary agreement. Turns out, using an engagement to access funds for illegal corporate transfers crosses more than a few state lines. Her fork trembled as she reached for the salad, but her voice was still sugar. Yo, you always were the safe one, Robert. Always so thorough. No, I replied. I was the one who loved you. You mistook love for leverage, and now, you're about to learn the difference. I stood to leave, dropped the signed legal packet in front of her plate. Before I walked out, I added one final note. Enjoy that villa in Bali while it lasts. It'll be under government seizure within a week. The next morning, I woke up to chaos. Headlines, emails, phone calls. Daniel's image was all over business tabloids. Former startup founder under investigation for fraud, ex-fiancé involved. Margaret's face surfaced in accompanying articles. So did mine. But I didn't care. Because this was no longer about protecting my image, it was about destroying the illusion she built around hers. Melissa came over, waving her phone. She's spiraling, she said, shoving the screen toward me. Margaret had gone live on Instagram. Hair a mess, face bare, voice trembling. I'm not the villain, she said. I made some mistakes, but I was pushed. You don't know what Robert's like behind the scenes. He was cold, controlling. He used me for my image. I laughed so hard I nearly dropped my coffee. She's really doubling down, I muttered, but the best part, the comments. Didn't you use his wedding booking with another man? Where's Daniel now, still holding your cocktails? Imagine stealing someone's honeymoon and then blaming them. She ended the live in under 3 minutes. Comments disabled, profile locked. But it was too late. The video was screen recorded and reposted within minutes. Internet justice is faster than karma. The court case proceeded faster than expected. Daniel refused to show up. Margaret's parents showed up in her place for the first pre-hearing. They sat across from me, tired, ashamed, trying not to meet my eyes. Her mother tried to reach for my hand. Robert, you were always good to her. Please, don't let this go public. I stared back, cold, empty. Your daughter embezzled money from a joint wedding account and wired it to her lover under fraudulent pretenses. This isn't about heartbreak anymore, it's about accountability. They had no answer, just silence and shame. Outside the courthouse, Margaret waited. She was in black this time, finally dressed for a funeral, her own. You're really doing this, she said as I passed her. I didn't slow down, but I did answer. You picked the wedding date, Margaret. I just turned it into your judgment day. She grabbed my arm. For a second, her fingers curled the same way they did when she used to say, "Don't be mad." I loved you, she said. I turned to her, finally looked her in the eyes, really looked. She wasn't crying, she wasn't pleading, she was performing. You loved control, I said. You loved being adored, but love without truth is performance, and I stopped buying tickets. Her lips parted, no words came out. I left her there, alone, just like she left me. That night, Melissa and I stood on my balcony. The city below looked softer somehow, cleaner, like my rage had burned off the smog. Is it done? She asked. Not yet, I replied, but soon. She tilted her head. You know, you could start over now, clean slate, new city, new name, new heart. I thought about it. The silence, the chance to rebuild. But then I remembered the exact second Margaret stepped out of that car on our would-be wedding day, smiling, knowing. She didn't just walk away, she made sure to walk over me, wearing heels, while holding someone else's hand, in front of my world. So no, it wasn't done yet. Robert, Melissa said softly, what do you still need? I turned to her, voice steady. I want them to remember, every time someone Googles her name, every job she applies to, every man she tries to seduce next, I want the shadow of this betrayal to follow her like PE, a fume she can't wash off. Melissa didn't smile, but she nodded. I'll help. And she did. She helped me build a full dossier, screenshots, wire trails, photos, transcripts, legal summaries, witnesses. We turned it into a feature-length case file, neat, branded, backed with documentation. And then I leaked it. Anonymous Reddit thread, title, I let her pick the wedding date, she picked it for her honeymoon, with my money, my trust, and my ex-best friend. It went viral, millions of views, podcasts picked it up, reaction videos exploded, everyone had a take. Margaret's name trended for 2 days straight, she deleted every account, disappeared from social, job listings vanished from her LinkedIn. Daniel, last I heard, he was under criminal investigation and trying to flee the country. Interpol was involved. Good. And me? I finally exhaled, really exhaled. First time in months, maybe years. Because for once, the justice I fought for didn't come from fantasy. It came from fact, from evidence, from fire, and from finally realizing, love that needs lies to survive isn't love, it's a mask, and when that mask falls, the only thing you owe it is truth. 6 months after the lawsuit was filed, the verdict came in. The court ruled in my favor. Margaret and Daniel were found jointly liable for financial misconduct, emotional damages, and willful fraud against an engaged partner. The judge's final words echoed in my ears like poetry. This was not a case of simple betrayal, it was a layered scheme designed for personal gain under the illusion of romantic commitment. The plaintiff's evidence is irrefutable. They were ordered to repay the full amount, plus damages. Daniel was also facing separate criminal charges related to the fraudulent shell companies. And Margaret, she lost her legal license, disbarred permanently, publicly. The media got the story within 24 hours. Headlines exploded again. Bridal betrayal, lawyer loses license after eloping with groom's best friend using stolen funds. Wedding gone viral, the story that ruined 2 reputations and made one man a legend. And just like that, Margaret Palmer became a cautionary tale. The woman who faked a future to steal a life. The woman who wore white on a stolen vacation and ended up branded in digital ink forever. But that wasn't the end. Not for me, not for Melissa, and not for what I had left to say. You see, I didn't stop with the lawsuit. I compiled everything into a book. Real names changed for legal reasons, of course, but the facts remained intact. Title: She Said I Do, Then Flew with My Best Friend. It hit pre-order charts the same week the verdict went public. Podcasts invited me, TV interviews followed, everyone wanted the man behind the headline. But what they didn't know was this. I didn't do it for fame, or for sympathy. I did it to turn my pain into a weapon they could never silence. Margaret reached out once, not by call, not by text, a letter, handwritten, almost poetic. She said she missed the version of us that made her feel alive. Said she regretted how far things went. Said she never meant to destroy me, only to find herself. I didn't reply. Because by the time I received it, I was already speaking to publishers in New York, already finalizing the documentary rights, already halfway into my next book. This time, fiction, but based on truth, because nothing is more powerful than a man who's seen the bottom and built an empire from it. Melissa stood beside me the entire time, never asked for anything, never demanded credit, she just showed up. Again and again, through rage, through silence, through healing. One night, after the first interview aired and the comments flooded in, messages from men, women, strangers thanking me for telling the truth, I sat beside her on my balcony and said, "You were right about her from the beginning." She smiled softly. "I wasn't trying to be right, Robert. I was just trying to protect the only person who ever treated me like I mattered." I looked at her then, really looked. Not as the friend who'd seen me at my worst, but as the woman who never left, even when she had every reason to. I reached for her hand, she didn't flinch, didn't pull away. "Let's start something," I said, not fast, not loud, but honest. She nodded, and that was all we needed. Weeks later, I received a legal notice. Daniel was appealing the judgment, claimed emotional distress, said I'd humiliated him unfairly. Said the viral posts had affected his mental health and business prospects. I laughed out loud. I walked into the hearing with my lawyer and handed over a USB. Inside, footage from the private investigator. Audio of Daniel laughing at a bar, bragging. "I made it to the Maldives with the bride and the bank account. That guy still thinks love means loyalty." The courtroom laughed, the judge didn't, appeal denied. And Daniel, he finally got what he deserved, a suspended sentence, public community service, and bankruptcy. I heard he's back in his hometown, working the front desk at a cousin's startup, can't hold a job, can't escape the Google results, can't leave the country. Interpol still watches. Margaret, on the other hand, went dark, no social media, no online presence. Rumors said she tried to change her name, apply abroad, nothing stuck. You can hide your profile, you can delete your photos, but you can't delete a story that's already gone global. I know because people still send me links, still forward articles, still say, "Isn't this the woman from that wedding story?" And every time I see it, I nod, yes, that's her, but I don't feel hate anymore, I feel nothing, and that, truly, is the sharpest blade, because the opposite of love isn't hate, it's indifference, and I reached that long ago, on the 1-year anniversary of the wedding. That never happened. Melissa and I stood outside the courthouse. I wasn't holding a bouquet. At this time, I was holding a pen, a fresh book deal, a new contract, a full circle ending, and as we walked past the building where it all began, she squeezed my hand and asked, "Would you still let her pick the date?" I laughed. "No," I said, "I'll pick the next one myself." And I meant it, because this time, it'll be real, it'll be earned, it'll be mine.